It's all about the money with Nhlanhla Makhanya.
It is now time to delve into a topic that holds immense potential for Mzansi Africa's growth. I'm talking about the development of our rural economy. Joining us is the insightful Gugulethu Xaba, an economist with Amandla Omnoto. Gugulethu, it is always a pleasure to have you with us on the show. How are you doing today?
Good evening, Ngoni, and your listeners. A pleasure is mine. I'm doing great, my brother. I hope you're doing well.
I'm lovely. How is your new year treating you so far? What are the prospects?
The prospects are looking very good. The new year is treating me very well, of course, with good planning and clinical execution. I hope that things will work according to plan and will move. And what is very good these days is I think we're going to have a bumper harvest in South Africa. There's very good rains literally all over.
Yeah, we can tell.
Except in a few places here and there. So I believe that heavens have really opened and we must make full use of that.
Lovely. We're looking forward to that harvest. Hopefully it translates to jobs in that agri sector. Now, Gugulethu, you are deeply involved in rural economy development programs, kakhulukazi in northern KwaZulu-Natal. Talk to us as to why this region is so pivotal in driving economic growth.
Yes, essentially it's just all over the country, but because I come from northern KwaZulu-Natal, obviously we have launched, I think sometime last year, what we call Operation Buyelekhaya, which has to do with the fact that people like us, coming from whichever area in South Africa, we've got to go back and find ways of adding value and uplifting our communities from whence we come. So in KwaZulu-Natal, therefore, northern side, as you are mentioning, there is a lot of potential in rural areas. I'll just make an example of Zululand district, where I come from. There is humongous potential in terms of agriculture. Let me just first say across sectors of economy. Number one, agriculture, which has really been a sector that I think has taken a back seat, all because of the urbanization phenomenon, where many of us move straight into big cities and centers of economic power, running away from what should really be an environment that we must drive ourselves. So if you look at the agricultural potential, it's quite huge, both in terms of its forward linkages, that is value addition, agro-processing, as well as backward linkage in terms of your primary agriculture and your livestock production, your farming, and all of those types of things. But more than that, rural economies are sometimes confined to agriculture as if that's the only mainstay potential. There is a lot in terms of mining. If you were to look at big mining companies that are mining in Richards Bay, who are making billions of dollars, all the way down to Eshowe and Melmoth now, where there's a big mining that is going to be taking place there in terms of iron ore. Down to KwaZulu-Natal Northern, which is where I'm referring to, where you're talking great coal potential. There are mines that are there that are going to open. And the types of coal there that you find, it's very top. It's coking, not even anthracite. Coking and anthracite, not even grade C type coal. And you go to Pongola, where you've got some a bit of gold. So if you look at all that, including tourism, which has not been fully exploited. If you were to talk Zululand, once again, there are 7 kings which are buried somewhere at Babanang, including Zulu and others. That should become a mecca of South Africa, of KwaZulu-Natal, so to speak, in terms of tourism. But honestly, do you think there's any knowledge and understanding of such heritage sites by us, particularly Zulu people? And then you can go further and say where the king lives and all his igodlo, the places where Nhlanhla Makhanya, Zilo, Noma Isilo, that is just part of tourism. Then you can just again look at manufacturing, the forestry in that particular area is good, it's big, and the communities through trust who are now owning such forestry. But do you have any significant processing plant that does furniture production? And do you have any significant agro-processing facility that does meat production? As you know, Zululand is very big on livestock production, both in terms of goats as well as in terms of cows, cattle. So this just is a typical example that you would find in any other rural area in South Africa, wherein we need to activate economic activities through those pillars of the economy.
It's really fascinating to think about the untapped potential in these areas, almost like a sleeping giant ready to vuswe. Talking of vuswa, what do you think the rural communities' role play in shaping their own economy? Kakhulukazi, maybe just rephrase it this way: how can we leverage traditional systems to drive progress? Because obviously there's something there. There's a lot. There's a mine.
Yeah. There's a lot of economic activities that I think there's a document, I think, which is part of the National Planning Commission called an Integrated and Inclusive Rural Economy, which I think is derived from the National Development Plan that talks to specifics in terms of what needs to be done in rural areas. But I think what is important for me is rural communities must organize themselves for rural economic power, because the spaces, the nature leaves no vacuum. And you go now to rural areas, uzothola neshayina likhona liyadayisa nabantu basendiya abavele endiya angikhulumi nangamandiya azale South Africa abavele endiya abayizele nje just because they see the opportunity. There's nothing wrong with that. It's people trading and all of that. But all I'm saying is, do we really need to wait until our spaces are fully occupied by others other than ourselves when we've simply abdicated the responsibility? There is so much to be done in rural areas. If you were to look at rural areas, Mnguni, they are developing almost on autopilot on their own without any proper infrastructure. People are building mansions in rural areas. People are building beautiful infrastructure in rural areas. But even there, you need to find a way of properly organizing so that there will be proper infrastructure even if it comes thereafter. So the whole spatial development of rural areas, you find places where people still pay 100 rand to go to town. Even in my own town of Nangoma, there are people who still pay 250 rand to and fro to go to town, whereas a small shopping, not a mall, but a shopping complex could have been created in an area that has got 50,000 people, right, or 20,000 people, to make sure that this money that is spent on traveling is not spent, but it's spent on buying goods. But more than that, what we need in rural areas is the irrigation. Currently in South Africa, we're sitting with about 1.5 million hectares under irrigation. The program of irrigation in rural areas where there is land that is proper and fertile for planting, which is a case in point, Jozini. That place is a mecca of agricultural output in South Africa, and there's a huge dam there. Why? I was looking at the 350 that the government has been giving ever since COVID. To come to think of how many billions are spent every month on that 350, just because there was a crisis, and which is good because it's pushing people. But that 7-8 billion rand that is spent monthly, imagine if we had an agri-revolution and the political will to say we are going to turn the tide. Remember, Mnguni, this year, according to the ShopRite type report that was released last year early, is a year wherein we are told there is projections of inadequate food and food insecurity in South Africa. And it's very sad. I was addressing a conference in India just last month. The India has turned the tide on issues of food security. And they are now a food secure nation with there of 1.4 billion people. They are only now dealing with issues of making sure that because you're dealing with perishable. In South Africa, we don't have that. There is no will. So we believe that this time around, government and all key stakeholders should drive the rural economy to an extent that it should be driven to provide for rural communities.
Well, I think there's a lot that still needs to be done in terms of, because there are synergies between the traditional knowledge and modern entrepreneurship. And I think if we can put those two together, we can find growth. And of course, we definitely need political will. Amandla Mnotho and Operation Gugulethu, because time is against us. Let's zoom into that. Tell us more about Amandla Mnotho and the role it plays in sharing entrepreneurial skills. And what exactly is Operation Gugulethu?
We are on a tri-dimensional strategy, which is a multifaceted approach towards elevating economic activities among the natives. That Amandla Mnotho provides a platform for proper, good quality information for good quality decisions. And we all the time emphasize that, and we obviously have got we activate markets both local and abroad. Yesterday we were just talking about our markets in Germany because we are very much strong in that area of the world where we supply turmeric and supply all medicinal herbs. Operation Gugulethu, like I mentioned, Umguni going back to where he was born to plow back and make sure that they do something for their community. But the Rural Chamber of Commerce, we just launched it last month, first of its kind in South Africa. We're building it very painstakingly because we want it to be extremely impactful through packaging of land parcels and all sorts of things of parcels and economic activity in our rural spaces so that we can exploit those opportunities ourselves. People don't want to travel there long distances. I would love to just stay at Nongoma if all facilities and everything else was there for me to stay, but nobody else should curate that but myself, and that's what we're about. That's a tri-dimensional approach that we've adopted to drive our economic activity.
Talking about empowerment through entrepreneurship, it's not just a slogan, but a reality that you are making it happen. Now, let's talk about your Rural Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Can you explain as to how the Rural Chamber of Commerce and Industry operates and who can participate?
Yes, Rural Chamber of Commerce and Industry, like I said, we launched it last month. It's a fairly new baby of ours, which baby is meant to make sure that it connects people who are resident in rural areas and those that are coming from rural areas. And we plan on ensuring that we get structures like chambers of commerces, which or other structures of which are organized structures in rural areas to participate, and even individuals. We'll actually be launching our website in a couple of weeks, where we shall be directing people as to how do they participate. Actually, we have even linked up with the India Chamber of Commerce because we've got a lot of things to leverage in terms of learnings, same as other Chamber of Commerces in the country. But we are saying we need to create livelihood economically in our rural areas and make sure that the things that we're talking about now in terms of mining activities are now structured properly, and people in rural areas don't just become spectators, but they participate in all those types of commercial activities, and they get to know how to negotiate that from the downside up, so that they don't just wait until they are given what is called, no, we're going to build a hospital or a clinic. They must participate in real economic activities, and same as tourism, and same as building small garages that are rural based, so people don't have to travel for filling up fuel. So it's going to be all-encompassing, driving the entire economic activity in rural areas across the country. And by the way, we are aiming to grow right across the continent because our continent is still predominantly rural, and there's a lot of development that needs to happen there.
And you still do have land, plenty of land, and we have that is unutilized. Now, given the challenges that you and I, we know, and amongst other things that you've mentioned today, such as your infrastructure and access to markets, are there any innovative solutions that maybe are being implemented to overcome these obstacles? Because we know very well, me and you, that I can plow, but I can raise inkukhu ngenze konke, but if ngenayo market, it becomes useless.
Market yokuqala mnguni uwe nami. You know, I always hear people say anginayo market, but you have you have a first market that you must think about. I think the change of mindset should be there in terms of knowing that we don't need to run to big value chains, right? But we are the market ourselves, well organized, we can supply ourselves, and that's what other people are doing. But over and above that, we've got lots of formal markets, right? Where we supply big institutions that are chain-based, and we've got markets, like I've said, in Serbia, we've got markets in Europe. We've got our office there in Germany, for instance, where medicinal herbs, it's a new gold. Turmeric, ginger, liquid Japanese, all those types of things that we want people to plow so that they can be able to export. But that needs certain quality, and this is what we try and teach people so that they can adhere to high quality standards in terms of food safety and all other requirements.
Abantu Natali, they tend to come together in a form of a stokvel, but only to buy food or even just to save money and buy hlukanise at the end of the year. Will that be an option that we can use to do exactly what you're advocating?
That is a very, very best option for people to come together. I was just making an example yesterday. We were talking about turmeric, which the seeds, organic seeds that are suited for our export market, cost 150,000, for instance, a hectare. But their return on investment are humongous. And I was saying to people, come together, put money together and plant, right? And then be able to grow from there. Don't just work alone, but work as a unit and work as a group. Let those stockpiles be converted into economic structures that will drive economic growth.
Nonkosi, thank you for enlightening us namhlanje on the transformative potential of indawo zasemakhaya nomnotho. And it's clear that with the right strategies, these areas can really become pillars of growth in Mzansi Africa. We thank you for your time, sir.
Always a pleasure.
It's all about the money. Nhlanhla Makhanya. From 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Mondays to Fridays. Only on Vuma.